All right, let's get right into it. There's a new declaration making waves, and it's bringing together some of the most, well, unlikely allies you could ever imagine. And they're all focused on one thing: the future of artificial intelligence. It's called the Pro Human AI Declaration, and we're about to break down who's behind it and what exactly they're demanding. So, let me just start with a question that sounds like the setup to a really weird joke. What in the world could possibly get Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former chief strategist, and Susan Rice, who was Barack Obama's national security advisor, to put their names on the exact same document? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is the massive promise and the potential peril of AI. And we're not just talking about two people here. No, this is a huge cross-partisan alliance, all built around this shared declaration for the AI age. And when you see who's involved, you realize pretty quickly that they think the stakes are incredibly high. I mean, just look at this list. The ideological whiplash is pretty incredible. You've got Steve Bannon and Glenn Beck on one side of the aisle, and Susan Rice and Ralph Nader way over on the other. Then you throw in billionaire Richard Branson, a Nobel-winning economist, Darren Acemoglu, and even one of the godfathers of AI, Yoshua Bengio. This is definitely not your typical coalition. So, what could possibly bring all these people to the same table? Well, the declaration frames our current moment as a really critical choice, a genuine fork in the road for all of humanity, with two very, very different futures ahead of us. The preamble puts it bluntly. As this tech race just gets faster and faster, we are being forced to choose a direction. And that single sentence is the entire motivation for this whole thing. So let's break down what those two paths actually look like. And the choice they lay out is pretty stark. On one side, you've got this race to replace, a future where humans get sidelined, a ton of power gets concentrated in just a few hands, and our basic stability is put at risk. But on the other side, there's a better path, one where AI actually amplifies our abilities, empowers people, and enhances human dignity. The people who sign this are basically shouting that we have to consciously and deliberately choose that second path. But a document like this doesn't just appear out of thin air, especially not with a group this diverse. So how on earth was this consensus actually forged? Well, the key player here is the Future of Life Institute. They're a nonprofit whose whole mission is to steer advanced tech in a positive direction. They were the ones who brought everyone together, who facilitated the whole drafting process. Basically, they got all these different voices into the same room to talk. And it wasn't just big-name individuals either. The organizations involved are just as varied. You've got the Congress of Christian Leaders, the American Federation of Teachers, the Progressive Democrats of America, and a whole bunch of others. This coalition just goes to show how broad the concern over AI's direction has really become. And the whole process was very deliberate. This wasn't just a weekend project. It involved multiple in-person meetings to hammer out the text, line by line. Then there was a final meeting in New Orleans this past January to ratify the whole thing before it was finally released to the public in March. This was a serious, concerted effort. Okay, so now let's get to the real heart of the document. The declaration is built around 5 central pillars that lay out this pro-human vision for AI. Here they are. Number 1, keeping humans in charge. 2, avoiding concentration of power. 3, protecting the human experience. 4, human agency and liberty. And finally, number 5, responsibility and accountability. So, let's dig into what each of these really means. First and foremost, human control is completely non-negotiable. The declaration demands that powerful AI systems have a human-operated off switch. It says the race towards superintelligence has to stop until we can actually prove it's safe. And AIs absolutely cannot be allowed to copy themselves or resist being shut down. The point is crystal clear. Humans have to stay in the driver's seat, period. And that demand for safety isn't some fringe idea. Polling shows that a solid 69% of Americans agree that superintelligence development should be paused until it's proven safe. Pillar 2 is all about power. It calls for preventing AI monopolies because nobody wants a handful of companies controlling this tech. It also says that the massive economic benefits need to be shared broadly, not just hoarded at the top. And it demands that any huge societal shifts driven by AI have to get a green light from the public, not just from a corporate boardroom. The third pillar focuses on our social fabric, on what makes us human. It argues that AI shouldn't be allowed to replace core human relationships in families, in communities.
It also makes really strong demands for clearly labeling any AI-generated content, preventing these systems from being designed to be addictive, and maybe most critically, protecting kids from manipulation.
And again, public opinion is overwhelmingly behind this. A whopping 73% of Americans want to see strong safeguards put in place to protect children from manipulative AI.
Pillar 4 is all about our fundamental rights. It states that AI should never be granted legal personhood, that people must have control over their own data, and, crucially, that AI can't be used to limit our liberty, free speech, or religious freedom. The whole point is that AI should be a tool to empower us, not weaken us.
And the final pillar is all about accountability. This one is a direct shot at the idea that companies can hide behind their algorithms. The declaration says developers must be legally responsible for the harms their systems cause, that executives could even face criminal penalties for catastrophes, and that tech companies should not get to write their own rules. And on that point of accountability, the public is right there with them. 72% of Americans believe AI companies should absolutely be held legally responsible when their products cause harm. So when you boil it all down, when you look at all 5 of these pillars together, they all point to one clear, overarching goal for our future with this technology. And here it is. The core conviction is that simple, and yet that profound. Artificial intelligence is a tool that should be built to serve human values and human needs. Full stop. Not the other way around. It's an incredibly powerful statement coming from an unbelievably diverse coalition. But it does leave us with the ultimate question. Will this unlikely alliance actually be enough to steer the breakneck development of AI and ensure that our future remains profoundly and intentionally pro-human?